is frustrated. Like really, really frustrated. Whoa, Fred!
I'm not sure, but there'll be somebody to know on the box. Somebody got free, so who knows? Hold on.
Hello. Hi, good evening, everyone. Is everyone settled in? If the tech team can tell me, I feel as if my voice is echoing. Is it echoing for the others? Okay, fine, thank you. Okay, well, I think now is a good time to start. So hello friends, and good evening. Welcome to our side event, which is titled Integrated Area-Based Approach to Tackle Child Labor at the Root and Ensure the Right to Education. I'm happy to share that this event is being organized by the Global March Against Child Labor, Education International, and the Work No Child's Business Alliance. My name is Purva Gupta. I will be your moderator for this 1-hour event. I'm a human rights practitioner and I'm a director at the Global March. So we all know that change in the fight against child labor takes place at all levels. But what is most crucial is the change that takes place at the grassroots. And that is what we are going to talk about, how using the area-based approach, we can really tackle child labor at the root, helping children come out of school, come out of work, and go to school. So we have a rich line of panelists here today. All of them are working actually in countries, working on the ground on the issue of child labor using the area-based approaches. But before we actually go to countries and to the panelists, let's have an overview of the area-based approach. And I would like to actually invite Nurgo Kone to do that. Nurgo is a senior education specialist. He works at Save the Children, Ivory Coast. So over to you, Nurgo.
Thank you, Purva, and good evening, good afternoon, everyone. And we are happy to have you now with us in this big conference talking about education and how education can help to eliminate child labor. As you all know, we are talking a lot about this phenomenon, but 1.60 million children are still out of school children. They are at risk and victim of child labor. My name is Kone Nurgo, as said. I'm senior education specialist from Ivory Coast, and I'm very happy and honored to share with you this evening or afternoon our area-based common approach. I will do this on behalf of our three coalitions. We have Work No Child Business, we have Global March, and Education International. The area-based approach has its own norm. The question is now not why children are not going to school, but the key question now is how children are going to school. We will be happy to share with all of you our benchmark of our area-based approach. As you know, area-based approach in our mean has his own principles and activities. Talking about principles, one I can say, each member of community share this message on the undeniable message on the importance of education in fighting child labor. Two, we have each member of community taking responsibility and being accountable to eliminate child labor. These two principles are very important if we want to fight child labor, taking into account the importance of education. We have many activities we are set up in the communities, like giving access to quality and inclusive education to all the children by involving communities members. We are setting also economic empowerment activity, taking in account the environment where communities are being living. We also setting up sustainable platform, protection platform, which engage the member of community themselves. And there we set up also referential mechanism where communities members are leading this mechanism. We're also raising awareness day by day on the impact of child labor in the community and the undeniable role on them. Now, we are all there to discuss with you, to show you what we mean when we are talking about area-based approach. keep safe, stay focused, and we will be happy to have this exciting journey with you. Thank you so much, and Pooja, you have the floor. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Nurgo, for setting the scene. I would now ask you to take your place in the audience, and I would now like to invite our panelists, which are coming from three exciting places, Ghana, Uganda, and Malawi. So panelists would ask you to come and join me here in the front. Maybe a nice welcome to encourage our panelists would be useful. Thank you. So don't want to take a lot of time and would just deep dive to really hear from these experts what are some of the best practices, what have been their experiences and learnings coming from the countries, coming from their own different sectors where they're working around using this approach to address child labor. So I would first like to move to Malawi. I've never been there. I would love to actually go to Malawi. So our first panelist is Pilirani Kamaliza. He's the child labor coordinator at the Teachers Union of Malawi. Pilirani, the Teachers Union are working in Malawi on the issue of child labor, making a strong link with education. What is it that you are doing in terms of working with the teachers and working with the school administration? Can you share your experience with all of us here?
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. Indeed, Teachers in Malawi, as a strong voice for all teachers in Malawi, we have always been there to contribute towards the elimination of child labor. And in all our work in the fight against child labor, we have always had these key messages. One, as the union, we believe that school is the best place for all children to learn and even to play. That's why in most of our schools, when we visit them, you find playing grounds in there because school is the best place for children. But also, we believe as a union that it is the responsibility of the parents to earn and children to learn. So parents should earn and children should learn. And also, as a union, one of our key messages in most of our work is that quality education, provision of quality education, one of the two to eliminate child labor. And finally, that child labor is evil, and whosoever perpetrates it should be strongly condemned for that. So in terms of our approach, from the education perspective, we do consider all the key components of a school. One, we have a component to do with teaching. So we appreciate the role teachers play to make sure that children remain in school. So we have these children who are already in school, but they are at risk of dropping out. As the teacher, sometimes whenever we are teaching them, whenever we notice signs, for example, those children dozing, children coming late to school, frequent absenteeism, and we notice, for example, academic performance for a student or students going down, those are some of the indicators that something is happening to this particular child. So hence the teacher must take an immediate action. So we do train teachers on how to support those children who are at risk of dropping out, including those children who have been withdrawn from labor and have been reintegrated back into formal education. So under that one, we have always provided afternoon classes, we call them remedial classes, to make sure that these children are at par with the rest of the students so that they are also performing well. But apart from that, as the union, Teachers in Malawi is one of the unions which also has always has been promoting professionalism. So we do sensitize our teachers on what is expected of them as teachers. So there are times when the behavior of some teachers also pushes children out of school. You talk of issues about sexual harassment, sometimes perpetrated by teachers. As the union, we strongly condemn some of these things, and we do sensitize our members on the National Teachers Code of Conduct. We are happy that the Minister of Education in Malawi has revised the National Teachers Code of Conduct, and the issues of child labor have been integrated. We are urging the teachers always that they should refrain from giving harmful punishments to the students, because those are some of the things that sometimes pushes children out of school. As teachers, we also promote child trafficking system amongst teachers. Whenever they have noticed that a child is missing from the class, the teacher should not just remain idle. They need to take an action. They can even involve the children in the class to find out where Mary has gone, where John has gone, and until we track what has happened to that particular child. Another component is on the children themselves, the learners. We also appreciate the role children themselves, who are the victims of child labor, the role they can play in combating child labor. So under our project, we empower children on issues of child labor. So we create awareness through anti-child labor clubs in the schools. Now, those children have been empowered. They're able to differentiate between child labor and child work. They are able to voice out against any injustice they experience. Even they're able to speak out against the injustice on behalf of those children who are not in school. So we empower those children in school to speak out on behalf of those children who are in child labor for immediate action. Speak to who? To different stakeholders or gatekeepers who can play a role in especially in their communities. So we do have anti-child labor clubs in the schools. We also do focus on another component on education. This is the community. The communities are also part of the school, because that's where children are coming from. And we appreciate the role the parents should do to make sure that their children are not in labor. So under that component, as the union, we do sensitize the communities on issues of child labor, because sometimes even the parents do not understand, do not differentiate what child labor is and how different is it from child work. So apart from empowering the children, we do also sensitize the parents on issues of child labor so that they understand. For those who don't understand, the moment they try to engage their children in child labor, those children, because they're empowered, they are able to speak out that perhaps I cannot do this work because it is likely to affect my education or my life in this other way. So we do also empower parents, chiefs, every gatekeeper, every person who can play a role. In this project, we believe that everyone has a role to play in combating child labor. Another component, very important component of a school, is school management or administration. Under this component, as the teachers, we have always targeted the school authorities, the head teachers. These are the authorities which ensures that things are flowing properly in the schools. There are times, for example, teachers are coming to school very late, frequent absenteeism, unnecessary absenteeism. So we also empower head teachers on how they should manage their schools effectively to make sure that provision of quality education, including safeguarding the limited resources, teaching and learning materials, because sometimes we find that even there's some carelessness within the schools. Some school materials, textbooks are being stolen. So we at the end, it is the child who suffers. So we do train our teachers on school management to make sure that school properties are safeguarded always. And finally, the school environment is very, very important. So under this one, as the teacher union, we also promote or encourage community to contribute or to support towards improved school environment. And also, as the union, we also contribute towards making schools attractive to learning, so thereby promoting sports. So in the project which we're having in Malawi, we have always promoted sports. We do donate various assorted sports materials to the schools to make sure that children remain in school, because we are saying school is the best place for children to learn and even to pray. I think so far that's what I can share. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pelirani, for really sharing the work that you are doing with the teachers and with the school administration to ensure that school is the best place for children to learn and play and to be safe. we now move to our next speaker. Before I introduce him and also give the floor, a note to the panelists to please keep your remarks brief so that we have enough time for interactions with the audience. So now moving on to our next speaker. He is Andrew Tago, known also as Andy. He's the Deputy General Secretary for the General Agriculture Workers Union, and he is also the Regional Coordinator for Anglophone Africa at the Global March. Andy, we already know that majority of the children are found majority of children are working in the agriculture sector. What has been your experience or GAVU's experience on using the area-based approach to address child labor in agriculture, in the supply chain, and particularly in some commodities? Yeah, I know you're working in cocoa, in fishing and other sectors. Please share your experience with us.
Thank you very much, Puva. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a step, and we have begun with that step. And then when we talk about child labor in the rural area, people see it as a very simple issue. But I told my colleagues yesterday, it is like a giraffe. When you are very close to a giraffe, you will see how small you look like. But when you are very far away from it, that is where you see it as a gigantic, enormous, and a very long animal. So the problem of child labor in the rural community is a complex and complicated one. But then we can develop and design very simple solutions that can help to address that one. And it is based on that we have used integrated area-based approaches towards child labor-free zones in agriculture. In cocoa in Ghana, we have done that. On Lake Volta fishing, we have done that. In oil palm farming, we have done that. And in rice farming, we have done that in communities. And this is a great action that we have done to produce. What excites me today is that we have a number of children who we have seen working on the lake. We have withdrawn them, and today they are advocates and good examples that can support in addressing child labor in other communities. And some of them are even in this conference. So we have piloted, experienced. We have done some things for far too long, like my colleagues have said. It's time to change the strategy to accelerate progress. And that is why in GAWU in Ghana, working with our partners, when you come to Lake Volta in Ghana, we have operated on certain principles that the right to the child is not a negotiable one. And children in rural communities also deserve, or adults too, also deserve good labor standards. And that informs how we have worked. We have also worked on the notion that child labor is not one person's business. It's a collaborated effort of all of us who exist at a point to bring the child out of the predicament and ensure that adults are in decent work. When you come to Pando Toko, for example, on Lake Volta, which is the biggest lake in Ghana, some say in the whole of Africa, it's man-made. And it produces fish called tilapia. And because it is man-made, you have a lot of long trees that eventually had been covered by the water. So when you are standing outside the water, you see only the edge of the tree, but under the water, it's long. And that is where people make their income. So fishermen go as early as 4 a.m. to cast net. And when they are going, they go with children. When they cast the net gets entangled with the tree shrubs under the water. And because of the complex nature of the underground activities, it is children who dive and go down there to disentangle the net. Sometimes when they get there, early in the morning, it's cold. They can be trapped by these shrubs under the water. Sometimes the net, they are trying to remove them. Instead of the net catching fish, it catches the children themselves. And they get disentangled under the water, which is a very dangerous thing for them. But some adults think that this job must best be done by children because of the way they have to maneuver to remove the net. Incidentally, that's where the fish also hides. So children are used on Lake Volta to do things. Some of them are slave children. Some of them are trafficked. Some of them, and you know what? The people who do the fishing see this job as a dangerous one, so they don't use their own children. What we are doing as a union, of course, promoting the fundamental rights is first to organize the people. So we have organized the people in the cocoa communities and then also in the fishing communities. We have provided organization for them. My colleague talked about using the chiefs and the rest. We have used the chiefs. And in using the chief, you're going to traditional authorities and the religious leaders. When you are going to use it, it's very difficult to convince these people that the 400-year-old practice of using children for labor must change. And it's a huge tax to go through conscientization, informing them. You need good examples for them. When they get the understanding, then within the jurisdiction of their chieftaincy, they pronounce that this area, I'm going to work as a chief of this community, that this area with a child labor-free zone. From now on, nobody should use child labor. This is stronger than the president's statement in the community. This is stronger than the Supreme Court law in the community. The people in the community will have to obey this. And we, in the union with our partners, what we have also done around that one at the workplace. Technically, the trade unions, we are not known in the community. My colleague said that the community people know us for the bad reasons. That is, whenever you call a strike, then you are talking about trade unions. So when you start working in the community, they tell you that we are not going to organize strikes here. The issue we have is a child labor problem. Say no, unions are beyond strikes. We are partners in community and rural development. So in the communities, after organizing, we form what we call community child protection committees. And the community child protection committees are the first point of call for anyone who identifies a child in child labor in the place. One of the things we have also done under our free zone concept is not only the informal area, but the formal area too must be, formal agricultural enterprises must also be child labor free zones. So we have negotiated clauses in collective agreement working with the employers to ensure that wherever the unions are working with the employers is a child labor free area, and that clauses are in the collective agreement. So we all work towards it. In the communities, that's why my friend the teacher is sitting here. We have worked children who we have identified as people or children in child labor. By the time we rescue them, they are no more in the normal state because they have been living in areas that are not normal. So
Andy,
they can...
please wrap up in 1 minute.
Okay, that's talking to me. So these are a combination, one thing to, so when we come, then we have what we call the bridge schools. The bridge schools is to place children at their right classes, and that level, the teachers work best with the trade union in agriculture on that. One thing too that had been done in Ghana is that we have adopted the child labor free zone policy as a best practice. And the government of Ghana, the minister is around. I don't know whether he came. He said he will come to this. The minister of labor in Ghana says he will come here. And I can see my colleague Venkat, where we learned child labor free zone, Hyderabad, some 15 years ago. And then we have developed this one. This is what Ghana has developed. We call it integrated approaches towards child labor free zone. And it has been accepted as a policy, protocols, and guidelines for addressing child labor free zones in Ghana. My last point is that whenever you take a child out of labor, you must replace that labor. If you leave that place, the child will come back. So whenever we do that on the lake, we train divers, the community young people as divers to replace the children. There are other economic activities we have done in cocoa using child labor free zone approaches, using the child labor monitoring systems. A child labor monitoring system is a component of a free zone that can help in identifying and then providing remedial services for children. When I say child labor, you say away. Child labor. Away. You raise your hand and throw it away. Child labor. Away. Thank you very much, Ruben.
Thank you, Andy. We'll move to our next speaker. She is Juliet Wajega, the country coordinator for Work No Child's Business in Uganda. Juliet, you've been working with communities to address deep-seated norms around child labor and education. And also, as we heard from the previous speakers, that the area-based approach really is involving involving the communities and engaging with them. Could you please share your experience around that area?
Thank you very much, Pova. As Work No Child Business Program, we work around 3 pillars: the community, the government, and the private sector. And as already shared by my colleagues, the community is very important, and how we work with the communities to change the norms. And particularly for us in Uganda, we are working in one of the most difficult communities, Karamoja region, where the norms are deeply rooted, and we also work in Busia. And actually, when we began this program, colleagues were saying, will you be able to make it? You know, Karamoja is a little difficult, but thanks to this very good approach, which is under the area-based approach, where we tackle some of this through norm change. And also thanks to the Netherlands government, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for making this happen. We are happy about that. So the social norm is about the communities accepting that no child should work, all children should be in school. My colleague already talked about Pirani, about that. So that should be the norm. So we work towards that. And we also look at those special issues like the cultural practices that maybe leave out girls. So we look at issues like child marriage, or that the forced marriages, the female genital mutilation. We also look at that, such that even the girls are not left out. And another aspect, it involves all the stakeholders in the community: the teachers, trade unions, parents, learners, the private sector. Everyone in the community must be part of it. And then it looks at all forms of child labor. For us, we don't look at the worst forms. In some interventions, you would find them emphasizing the worst forms of child labor. It's all about child labor, because every child has a right to education. Every child has a right to education. And this education must be provided by government. Today I was attending the policy session on Africa, and it came out very, very clearly. All the ministers, everybody committing that. And I hope we can live to have it happen in action. So it's about that. And also in this, the norm change, it also, the power comes from the people themselves, committing that we need quality education. So it's about the people themselves pushing and driving that change. So it's a very good thing if we want to eliminate child labor. And then how does it work? So as I told you in Karamoja, when we went, you start with that awareness raising, having community dialogues where sometimes you need somebody to translate for you, you know. And when you go there, also it's about looking for the influential people, the opinion leaders. Before you talk to the community, you must first convince the opinion leader to let you speak to them. And then, of course, the women sit behind, the men in front. But what matters is you deliver the message. Yeah. So we also work around mobilizing the community volunteers who work to help us to mobilize the communities. And of course, that is also a sustained action because they're part of the community. Then we also have mechanisms of tracking the children, both in the community and also at school. My colleague talked about the teachers. We also work with the teachers union, and they help us. They have cluster registers where they track the children. Also in the communities, we have these volunteers. So it's a two-way. So when a child is not at school, the teachers can track, the fellow learners can track. So also another thing that makes it work is the economic empowerment. We have the village savings and loans associations where the members themselves save for economic empowerment. It's also some sustained action. It's not, they don't get money from outside, but within their own savings. And then what I've already talked about is we have to engage government to see that they provide the education, and then also the private sector. We work with them. They need to take their responsibility of respecting children's rights to education and all the other rights. So about that, and yeah, those are the major things. And also around schools, because we also work with the Teachers Union as one of our partners. We train teachers on creating gender responsive school environments, and also any other issues that make the schools attractive. So that is also a key thing, plus the other school structures, the PTAs and so on, that help in school management and improving the school environment. So around the issues around COVID, of course, COVID-19 struck us very badly, especially in Uganda. It took 2 years for schools to be reopened. And around there, of course, girls got pregnant, and I think we have one of the highest rates of teenage pregnancy. People lost jobs. So when school started, some parents could not afford to take back the children to school. That is also there. And then the worst was child labor. These children were at home. They didn't have what to eat. So the parents would force them to go to the mines to look for food. And in Karamoja, it's the children who look for food. The parents stay home, then these little children mostly go to look for the money to buy the food. Yeah, and lastly, we also have about the girls, I've talked about it. And then us, as Work No Child Business Program, we've joined the Ministry of Education to disseminate the guidelines that can allow these girls to go back to school as part of our response to the challenges. And also about the schools, also the other challenge I've not mentioned, is the schools are not available in the place where we work. So we are working with the communities to see that we set up a school. We work with the local governments to put up a community school where these children can go as one of the measures. Because you tell children to go to school, but if there's no school, it's self-defeating. So we continue demanding that our government and also all the various governments should make schools accessible and free to all the children. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all the panelists for sharing this rich experience and also very concrete solutions which are emerging from countries. I don't think that I will be able to sum it up. It's very comprehensive, it's very diverse, how to make schools safe, how to make learning and teaching child-friendly, how to include farmers, how to replace child labor with adult workers in the agriculture sector, how to address norms, how to make sure that communities allow girls to go to school. Very, very interesting experiences and also concrete solutions. Before we actually open it up to the audience for questions and answers, we do have one more speaker who is actually from the government side. I would like to invite Charlotte Bernard. She is the Senior Policy Advisor from the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Someone was clapping, so please go ahead. Thank you, Charlotte, for joining us. The Dutch government, we all know, has been at the fore in the fight against child labor. Also, we know recently that the Dutch government became a pathfinder country. Can you share how does the government see using the area-based approach to address child labor, not only in the supply chains, but also to address all forms of child labor?
Sure. Can I use this one? Thank you very much. And thank you for your question as well. I'm not sure if I can say that much actually about the broader sense of how the area-based approach is also working to eliminate child labor in the broader sense, because I think all the stories the panelists gave was already a good example of that. What I'd like to highlight a little bit more maybe is on that supply chains aspect, because the elimination of child labor is a priority for the Dutch government, and as a consuming country, we focus especially on the on elimination of child labor in supply chains. And to work on that, we have a 3-track policy aiming to create an enabling environment and, of course, sustainable supply chains. And we have 3 complementary programs that we support. One is focusing on capacity building of local governments. The second one is focusing on supporting businesses. And the third one is the Work No Child's Business program, which is based on the area-based approach. And by empowering local communities, awareness about child labor increases and children get out of work and go to school. And I think it's also interesting that what is also mentioned by the panelists, that all the relevant stakeholders in communities are involved, including the private sector. And that is important to make sure that child labor really disappears, and instead of ending up with just simply displacing children from one sector to another. And empowering communities and the people in the communities is also important to raise their voices and also to tackle the root causes of child labor. And to also look a bit forward to the call to action that will come out of this conference. I think also the area-based approach is very interesting in the light of that call to action. And just reading it, I'd like to make sure that it's that I'm saying it good, but the importance of the integrated area-based approach is recognized in the call to action, and specifically related to the ending of child labor in supply chains. But also the work you do in the communities in general on child labor, but also in education, I think that's also very related to what comes out of the call to action. So the work is very important, and I think the area-based approach can be used for that and to also work further in the future. And as the Netherlands, we have our current child labor programs to support the call to action. And as you also mentioned, Purva, we became a pathfinder country of the Alliance 8.7. And that means that we developed a roadmap together with all relevant Dutch stakeholders, also including some of the partners who are sitting here, Global March, the Work No Child's Business Alliance. And I think this roadmap wants to accelerate the elimination of child labor. And we have 3 priorities in our roadmap, which is multi-stakeholder approaches, tackling root causes, and monitoring, which also aligns a lot with what comes out, what's expected to be in a call to action. Furthermore, we also want to search for more links with our work on living income, as it is important, as we all know, and we heard a lot of times during this conference already, that income of parents increases, so that they don't need to rely on the income of their children's work. And this could be done, for example, to make sure that there is a fairer value distribution in supply chains. And furthermore, we have also many companies in the Netherlands who are willing to make changes. The Fund Against Child Labour, one of the programs that we support, supports several companies to set up projects to fight child labour in their supply chains. And some of these companies have become business ambassadors to motivate other companies to also take up their responsibility to eliminate child labour in their supply chains. And there's also the due diligence legislation coming up in the Netherlands and hopefully also in Europe, looking at the commissioners or the delegates from the European Commission. We might expect that this will also increase the ask of companies for support. And why am I mentioning this? Because I think it's very interesting in all these aspects that the area-based approach can play a role in that. For example, when companies need to eliminate child labour in their supply chains or want to work on that, the area-based approach can be used and support companies to eliminate child labour, especially in the lower tiers of their supply chains. And in the end, that is where the change needs to happen. To make changes underground and to really eliminate child labour. So I would like to end now, and I also want to use the slogan I think you mentioned as well, let children learn and let parents earn, and to add to that, to make sure that children have access to quality education and that the parents, which includes also teachers, get a living income. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Charlotte. I know that you are also busy with other commitments, so thank you for making time to join our side event.
Thank you very much. Good luck.
So we can now open We can now open the floor for questions. I already see okay, I see 4 hands up. Maybe we'll take 3 questions at a time. So I first request the lady on the side to please come up and share your question. Please make your question very brief so that we can take many more questions. If you already know which panelist your question is addressed to, please state that as well.
All right. Thank you very much. My name once again is Kutiawana Juliet from the National Union of Cooperative Movement and Allied Workers Uganda. I would like to thank the panelists for the experience they've shared, especially my brother from Ghana and my sister from Uganda. I have 2 questions, one for the brother from Ghana. With all the work that the union has done, to an extent that working documents have been adopted into policies, how has this improved the relevance of trade unions in relationship to your working relation with the government, or the union still has to take opportunities as they come? Thank you very much. Then the other question goes to my sister from Uganda. I really want to thank you for the good job you're doing in Karamoja, because that is a region where education is not taken as very important, especially for the girl child. But the situation is that there are so many street kids in Kampala, which is the capital city of Uganda, and research has it that these kids come from Karamoja. Unfortunately, they use even very little kids who are below 1 year, and they're put under too much sunshine as these street kids are doing the begging, and they carry the money either to their children, to their parents or their guardians. What have you done to ensure that these children are taken back to their region and are able to get the education that they deserve, and also reinstated and reconnected with their families? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's take 2 more questions before we get the responses.
Thanks. Thanks. Chairperson and then facilitators, my name is Lawrence Bare. I'm from cooperatives or communities, of course. The role that when we are here internationally, when we agree, all of us, to say we are stopping child labor, who can do it again? Because government is here, will enforce that. So nobody will do that. Secondly, those owners of the companies, factories, wherever children, who will employ? Because those people are here. No one will employ again. And then, of course, the role of the unions, those who speak on behalf of the workers, what they say if they are organizing in the factory floor, who will again do that? I think the power is here, and if we resolved today, this will not happen again. But it is our responsibility to say, what is it that we are going to do by those children that are in the working space, removing them? Where are we taking them to? I think we must resolve. There's no children should be in the street. It's a force or a must that children should be at school. Introducing a different syllabus, practicals of what children want to do, learning theoretically, also learning theoretically. So we should be replacing this by saying we should put something in mechanism. And of course, learning from us will be there. Lastly, I think this should be noted in the South African context, the role of the communities. That even ILO, where it talks only about 2, we should resolve now and today. It should be no longer be 2 or 3, it should be 4. That will be government, that will be the business, those who own those factories, and then that should be the union, and that we must include communities from today, because these children comes from the communities. No child will the community release the child again. And from today, we'll be seeing the ILO resolving and working with communities, because that's the role and the start where communities are come from. Thanks very much.
Thank you. So for now, we'll take one more question from the colleague on the extreme left. Yes, and then we'll come back to the other questions soon.
Let me also thank all the panelists for the great introductions. My name is Mirka Mattila. I'm from UNICEF Côte d'Ivoire. I was listening our colleague from Ghana with great interest explaining the concept of child labor-free zones. It is something we are following very closely also on the other side of the border in Côte d'Ivoire. But my question is, how do you measure or verify that these child labor-free zones effectively are and remain free from child labor? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let's start with the questions that have been addressed to you, Juliet.
Thank you very much. This question was from my sister, my namesake, Juliet. Why there are so many street children and they come from Karamoja, and you are right, they mostly come from Napak district. And what have we done? As a program, we have reached out to the Kampala City Council, and actually about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, they tried to get all these children and put them in a bus to take them back. But as you know, they take them back and then they come back by themselves. People traffic them. So it's a very serious issue, which should not only be to Work No Child business, but to all of us in this room who hail from Uganda. And I'm glad to introduce our commissioner, who is the technical lead, Mr. Alex Asimwe. And I would like to, maybe he can say something as one of our technical leads in Uganda on this issue.
Thank you so much, moderator, and I would like to thank the Netherlands government and HIVOS for good work done in my country, Uganda. I want to share 2 best practices on how we are working together with our partners. And I think this is a very important point that we need to build on. For us, as the government of Uganda, we made child labor elimination to be anchored in the National Development Plan 3, meaning that all actors for social development must implement their interventions in line with the National Development Plan 3. And one of the objectives of this plan is to improve the foundation of human capital development. And then one of the interventions that will lead to the achievement of that objective is elimination of child labor. And that's why we have partners like HIVOS, my sister Juliet, can engage with any government agency, because what she's doing is anchored in the overall plan document for our country. Number 2 is that whereas we have child labor in some areas, you find that some areas do not have essential services like primary schools. So what the government has done is to establish primary and secondary education at all levels of lower local government, meaning that if you withdraw, rehabilitate these children, it is easier for you to integrate them in the nearest primary school or secondary school. And I think that's a right direction. Perhaps what we may need to do going forward is, for me, two things. One, how can we develop a national framework for integrated area-based approach? Because for me, that's a most important thing, that can the Ministry of Labor, that is responsible for labor inspection, be speaking in the same language that the Ministry of Education will understand, Ministry of Local Government will understand, and I think we can do that if we find a mechanism of developing a national framework based on this integrated area approach. And then two, in most cases, if you look at children over 12 years, even when you withdraw them, they may not fit into the setting of the primary school. So most of them, they want what we call work-based learning. So how can we take forward work-based learning instead of taking these children in what we call pedagogy, classroom teaching? You could have maybe practical training, and then you find the ways of increasing their numeracy and literacy, and they are able to get skill, and then be able to grow and join the labor market. Thank you. Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing the work that Uganda is doing. So we have some unanswered questions. So the next question was addressed to Andy. Andy, while you're also answering the question, could you also reflect on the question that came from the colleague from UNICEF around the monitoring of child labor-free zones? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we have something to share with Uganda. Now we are sharing. We have the national policy here. We can begin to talk about it in cooperation. Now let me present it formally to you on the show. Yeah, Ghana present to Uganda our plan of action, and we are willing to follow up with you. Beginning from the difficult one, that is from UNICEF, how do we measure? The indicators are that school enrollment increases, and then it doesn't also increase alone. We monitor that children who have gone to school are not in child labor in the schools. So we follow up in the schools to ensure that the children are in the school, and that we do with the teachers. With the teachers, the children we bring are in the school. There is also, when you go to the lake side, there is also visible presence that the lake side that used to be flooded with children. I told my colleagues that we asked parents that, what do you want your children to be? They said doctors, lawyers, engineers. Nobody mentioned the trade union. They didn't mention your jobs too. They wanted to be that. And then I was sitting with them in between the lake and the school. When you look at the right, the schools were there, they were empty. When you look at the left, the lake was there, and it was full of children during school going time. And we told ourselves, that was a waking up call for parents, that if you want your children to be doctors and lawyers and engineers, do they stay at the lake? They said no. Then we all pointed to the classroom. And that was the beginning of the conscientization, that we don't become doctors at the lakeside. We become doctors in the school. And that is it. And again, one key thing about the free zone is that, somebody used and I laughed. If by the time we are implementing the free zone, you have not entered child labor already, then forget it. You can't enter again. Because we put preventive mechanisms in place. The community system is such that they all know themselves. And when we elected the community leaders on child labor, now that the free zone is, any new person who is trafficked into the community is seen by the people and reported to the committee. So there is a preventive monitoring scheme. And depending on how much resources are available, those who believe in the child labor monitoring system will use it to collect names of all the the people in the community, that's the children. All the children are registered. Then we go to the school. All the children enrolled in school are also picked. When you subtract the two, it tells you the difference. These are the children who are hard to reach, and we go to look out for them and then put them back into school. So there are many, and then the chief is always working in the town. He's a town person. He's working there. Who is this? Who is this? Who is it? These are community. Whenever we upgrade community systems, they take charge of their children. And the parents in the community, the responsibility goes on them. And under a free zone is the parents who take their children to school and follow up and maintain them, not us who come from outside. So we empower them to take charge of their communities and to solve their own problems. The first question, which also came from the trade union, is good. I told you that they know us for Choboy, strike. But now the government is seeing us. When we were developing this document, I thought the minister had come. Some of the partners who developed it are here. The government chose me, myself, as I sit here, as the chairman for the National Technical Working Group. I was promoted. National Technical Working Group on developing protocols and guidelines. What else can you get from a government? That recognizing the role of trade unions and its partners. And then we use a tripartite plus system to develop. So this is not just a government document, but it's a national document that we all work towards, that we have borrowed and presented to our friends in Uganda. So, and on top too, finally, because of this one, we have been able to organize 21,000 cocoa farmers and farm workers. When we started doing child labor and extending the services to the cocoa farmers, they saw the relevance of, for us, we are a trade union, we like membership. They saw the relevance of becoming members, and they are members, and we are using that structure to empower them to get better prices for cocoa. They challenge the system and also take their children to school and pay themselves. So those are the things that we do with government, and we also do with other large players in civil society. Child labor. Child labor. Thank you very much, Puva.
Before I take more questions, I just want to get a sense of how much time we have. Can someone help me with that? Okay. So I'm told I have just 4 minutes left, so we can just take 2 more questions. Please state your question in. Okay. So we have. Okay, great. We have more time. Please state your question in just 1 minute and be as brief as possible.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I hear all the speakers that are saying there, but then again, we will still have the biggest problem if we are not going to deal with the employers of the kids. Then again, the question that I want to pose is that what are the sanctions that the governments of Uganda or Malawi do have for people who keep on employing kids? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see that Venkat has been really raising his hands. So Venkat, you have the floor and you have 1 minute. We can continue to have conversations with our panelists after the event.
I have one question for Dutch Embassy, but Dutch Ministry. To ask her, maybe anybody can take it up, to ask her that what are they doing with multilateral, with the other governments? They're doing with the companies, they're doing with the NGOs. Is there any policy framework in that? And I have another question to Andy. The national policy, I'm glad you are the chairperson of the national policy. Is there any, is it in a small districts or it's a national level you are doing child labor free zone concept in all districts? Or are you having a pilot? And finally, I think with that school teachers, Malawi Teachers Union, what is your program for older children coming into schools? And you said there are a lot of potential child laborers, potential dropouts, the older children who are not appropriate, class appropriate, but any plans in your union to give them accelerated bridge courses or anything you are planning? Thank you.
Thank you. Those are many questions. We'll take one last question. You have 30 seconds to present your question.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. The first speaker mentioned child labor clubs. I'd like to understand what that is. And then the community engagement in terms of child labor. Maybe we all need to commit to how to monitor it, because from these conversations, it seems the communities are very much involved, and I'm not sure
because I haven't seen the reduction. I mean, the data that we are seeing is telling us that there's an increase of child labor. Then to Uganda, maybe the proposal is that we don't have to put the children in buses. Instead, we need to create an environment in the communities that they're at, so that when they get there, the environment is conducive to reduction of child labor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let's first start with the questions addressed towards Malawi. You had two questions, one from Venkat and the other around what is the meaning of child labor clubs.
Okay, thank you very much for those wonderful questions. To start with, indeed, the presence of the employers of children in the communities is one of the pull factor contribution to child labor. And in terms of how we address this, because indeed, some of these children who are in child labor, some of them feel that they're not suffering, okay? They're employed, some are getting a lot of money. Sometimes they're also a threat whenever we just pick them and integrate them back into formal education, because they can also influence other children who are already there and to go back. So we have local solutions as well as national. Through the engagement with the chiefs, bylaws are set in the communities, targeting those employers who are fond of employing children. So local solutions, sometimes there are penalties which are given to whoever within the community employing children, but also we do engage the police or all law enforcers, because the laws are there at national level. But the communities are also given, they're empowered to formulate bylaws to deal with the problem at local level. So that's how we deal with the acts of employing children by the employers. About the child labor clubs, what is it involved in these clubs? The ILO IPEC program developed a toolkit which is called SCREAM, Supporting Children's Rights Through Education, Arts and the Media. So Teachers Union Malawi since 2011 has been using ILO IPEC SCREAM materials to empower children. So in those clubs, children are sensitized on issues of child labor through, for example, issues of drama, issues of, they use arts, and after some while, we do organize what we call child labor open days. For example, during the World Day Against Child Labor this year, we also organizing events in the communities whereby these children will act out different anti-child labor activities, emulating those child labor activities happening in their location, informing or urging traditional authorities to take action against child labor. So that's what is involved in the child labor clubs. For those children who, yes, they are children, they are below 18, but it's not right to bring them back to their original class. The Ministry of Education has a department on complementary basic education. So for those children whom, for example, we have identified is a child, but the law allows that child to be employed because he or she has reached the legal age of employment. So they are given an opportunity for complementary basic education, basically language and numerical skills. But apart from that, they are also referred to vocational training institutions for them to gain skills and be independent. Thank you very much.
So I see that we have many questions unanswered and we're running out of time. So I will request the speakers to answer the questions as briefly as possible. The next question was actually addressed to you, Juliet.
Okay, the question is about taking the children. Why children should not be abandoned in buses. I also don't believe in that. We need to create a conducive environment. But the place I'm talking about, Karamoja, why children run away. There's an acute food shortage. They don't have what to eat. So that's why they want to come to town and find something to eat. But as our commissioner talked of having a national framework on the integrated area-based approach, I think with that, we can make it. Yes, and then talking about communities, we seem to say we're working so much in communities, and yet the number of child laborers is increasing. I think we are all aware that worldwide, COVID-19 caused an increase in the number of child laborers, and it's a worldwide thing. So I think together we can see how do we work better, and especially bringing in our area-based approach to see that this number goes down. So it's a collective effort, and I think from here we should work collectively to see that the number of children in child labor goes down in our various countries. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So I will take one last question, and for any unanswered questions, I apologize in advance. Our panelists are here, the conference is still there. Please feel free to reach out to them, have a chat with them, and have your questions answered. So the last question that I will take now is, I will take two last questions actually, apologies. One is around, very interesting, around the sanctions towards employers, and we'll ask anyone to reflect on it. And one was the specific question addressed towards UND.
Yeah, thank you very much, Venkat. It's a new process, and the document is for the whole of the country. And what you are doing is for, and now it is taken gradually. We have piloted it, and we have seen that after 20, 30 years of doing things the wrong way, I was part of the wrong way, we have found a solution. If we get the right resources to it, I commit and pledge to people sitting here that in the next 5 years, we will not report again that Africa is topping the list in the whole world. When we use this method, with even a quarter of the resources that are coming out, we can use this method to address child labor in Africa. We have the solution. The second one is the bad guys, the employers of children. They don't have any organization like the formal employers association. They are just in communities employing children and doing the bad things. In the free zone approach, we use community intelligence, which is stronger than the police intelligence market. Community intelligence to get those guys. In the Volta Lake, 3 of them are now advocates of child rights on the lake. And they have been taking us to the places where the rest of the bad guys are. We are now using persuasion. When we get to the level of force, we bring the police to arrest. So the bad guys, some of them are now the good guys in addressing child labor in our countries. The sanctions. The sanctions, I like the community sanction. The chief in his palace, when you are warned, first one is warning. Second one, they warn you again. Third one, the chief will charge you. And when they charge you, they use the charge. They can charge you a goat. They can charge you 2 bottles of gin. They can charge you, they can charge you fish, their own crop. And they use those charges to run the chieftaincy. Because anytime you go to the chief, he must pour libation. So if you mess up, he will take money from you to pour the libation. So the chiefs have their own, but the law is also there that will go through the court. The challenge we have is that we are not able to gather enough evidence to be able to stand before the law court. And that we need some legal assistance in strengthening the child labor free zone systems in terms of sanctioning and then punishing perpetrators. As for trafficking, it's already a criminal act. So that one, if you traffic and you are caught, the law is clear.
Thank you very much. As you see, our speakers have such a rich experience, but this is the time to wrap up. So thank you, panelists, and also thank you to the audience. Have a good evening. On behalf of the organizers, Global March Against Child Labor, Education International, and Work No Child's Business, thank you for participating in this event. Have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Child labor, away. Child labor,
Away.
away. Child labor, away.
get more IT done with Enable. Now, with more remote monitoring and management, more flexibility, more automation,